Hey, Randy, episode 15.
Hey, I know to believe, isn't it?
Yeah,
I hope
nice,
you
nice
noticed,
number.
by the way, that I have my Ecuador football hat on here.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, we got upset, got beaten the 90th minute the other night. So
yeah.
I think we're playing this evening, Curacao. If we can't beat Curacao, we got no business being
The
in the
coolest
tournament.
thing
But
for what's going on, and I don't know how much you're tracking. I know you've had friends in town. Glad to hear that. One of the coolest things is it's easy for many people, especially Americans, to run down America and talk about sucks. And based on who the president is, when Biden was president, Republicans thought the country, was messed up and would never come back. Now, Democrats hate the country. It just all the politics. But what's been very, very cool, and it kind of started with a friendly in Auburn, Alabama. The eagle flying before the friendly, and Messi was at Jordan Hare Stadium, and the reactions that came out of people being in the state of Alabama and now more being in the broader United States, it's unbelievable. I was listening to some of a montage today. There was this one girl from England that loves the U.S. accents and the words we use and howdy and yes ma'am and yes sir, and
yeah,
she said y'all have figured out the language better than we have, but the hospitality that's been, which again,
yeah,
when you go to Europe or you go to another country right now, a lot of people think poorly of the US because they watch the
right,
news.
right,
You and I have talked about this. I think it's pretty cool.
yeah,
Same thing with the 85 15 Creo is when you sit down and have a dang conversation with people in real
right,
life, not on social media or listen to the stupid news. It's shocking what it looks like. And it's been very
yeah,
refreshing for me. I love this dang country. I still think it's the best experiment in self government. um, the UFC fight at the White House the other night, that was tried to be it wasn't political at all. I watched the whole thing. It was one of the last fight was the best UFC fight I've ever seen. And other than college football, it's one of my favorite events, or one of my favorite sports to watch. And it was not political at all, other than it was on Trump's birthday, which sucked because it was late Sunday night, early Monday morning before it was finished. But what they did and the flyovers and all that. There's just a lot of cool things going on around the 250 celebration. I think it's been neat for a lot of people here to look at how the Europeans are reacting, and they love this place. I think it's pretty cool. So anyway, a lot of people even said, when they were talking about the World Cup, oh, the U.S. is unsafe. You can't go there. It's going to be a terrible experience. And not only safe and good, but it's been like the opposite for the thing folks. So pretty cool
right.
stuff.
Yep.
So episode 15. This one's interesting, even from from when you and I started talking about it. It has evolved. It was
Yeah.
evolving hourly and daily for a little while. It was intriguing to watch all the different reactions, but the in Sorsby, Texas Tech, uh, the whole saga of that, watching what was going on, and you and I had a little bit of conversation about it. But at the center of that was a young guy, um, and that said, there was also all of college football hanging in the balance of everything of what would happen, what would not happen, conferences, other teams. Um, but it looks like at least the college football part of that kind of got put to bed. The Big 12 kind of put them in a box a little bit and forced some decisions. This is something different than what we've already talked about a lot with college football or term limits or the government. It's kind of the same thing. It's the balance of power to me is the crux of this. But I want to open up with some thoughts, and I want to turn it over to you. And I wrote something down because it was pretty complicated keeping up with the different
Yeah.
moves and my
Right.
thoughts. My thoughts changed a little bit daily. For some kind of foundational things that I never really didn't waver, no different. And you and I've talked a little bit about this. Different than a lot of the NIL. It's an eligibility discussion. It's a different flavor of why we were talking about eligibility and one that really hasn't been seen the same things. You've had uh, issues in college sports before, and it was pretty clear that they were ruled ineligible. But again, this was a bigger issue back on a team that was in the playoffs last year, so it kind of was brought to light. It's more Iowa State or somebody like that, where you've got some
Yeah.
people nobody knew of. So it was a big spotlight issue right in the middle of a lot of other controversial things on in football. So um, glad we're going to talk about this. I'm glad. I think the conversation going to go a little better because of how where it is now. So
Right.
it's kind of water under the bridge, and now we can do a little bit of an after action on it. So some of my thoughts, I wrote a little bit of a tagline. It's not the official one, but the ruling, the trump card, the outcome, and how all of that really affects the future of college athletics, and that's kind of the piece. It's something that I've come back to, and I've talked about this for many years with different friends. And I think this one was a little bit different. And Josh Pate talked about it. I thought he had a really good thing he brought up of the Penn State debacle, the Joe Paterno ending, and how that all flamed out. Their scandal under Art Briles. Those were issues that were court issues, criminal issues that probably didn't as much involve the NCAA. This was more of an NCAA issue that doesn't involve the criminality piece of it. And those two, I thought he brought up an interesting perspective that they're very unique. And I think people clouded both of those. And I think the lanes of who really had the ball in that, but through whether it's a moral indiscretion, where the speed limit, a lot of different things handle. I think there's one thing that I've stuck to, and I think it's true for all college sports, whether it's, badminton or volleyball or softball or baseball. Not very happy. Any happier than you are, Bob's team's doing well on
Yeah.
that. So
I wasn't gonna bring that up.
I know he
Well,
and I
maybe I
walked in
was.
together this morning talking about it. So everything. So,
Right.
um, at the crux of all that to me is it's a privilege to play college, and it's a privilege to play professional sports. It's not a right. And something that I had, I kept going back to through all this is things that are rights should end up in courts, but things that gets a little wonky when it starts ending up in court. Um, so to me, the whole issue is pretty simple. Um, that this was a rule that's drilled into athletes, and I actually talked to played in the golf tournament, and one guy who played in the NBA for a couple of and played around the world basketball. If you looked at him, you would never think he played professional basketball, but I think he played 10 or 12 years. Played in Tasmania, all over Europe. We were talking about this the other day, and a couple of his buddies that played college basketball with him, that from the first time they show up in a athletic setting, that rule's drilled in your head. Don't bet on sports, specifically your own sport. When you get to professional sports, it's even more so. And I think it's because why is that so important? Because really nothing undermines the confidence and the legitimacy of the product that's put on the field other than when people get into, and we've had referees with point shaving, that really starts making people question, is what they're watching legitimate? Um, and sports are supposed to be real, not scripted. I did go look. I was curious because there are so many people who are winning. If you could actually place a bet on the WWE, and the answer is
Yeah,
any
right.
legitimate is no. There are, I believe, some foreign ones that you can, but that seems very silly to me to play something that is fully scripted. Be like betting on the outcome of a TV show, which has happened. So
Yes.
um, it, again, legitimate, not sports entertainment, but legitimate sports. It's not scripted. It's supposed to be played out however that works on the field. Um, I do that Brendan Sorsby has a gambling problem. I think that's sad. I do commend him for seeking treatment for that. I've never one time thought that, made light of that. I've commend Texas Tech and the people around him for helping him through this. I believe that you you and I talked about it. I think Josh Pate talked about that. He's a lot more time in Lubbock than he or I either one, but he spent a lot of time there. He and his wife love it. Don't question any of those guys from Cody Campbell to Joey McGuire to the AD, any of them. I do agree with Josh Pate. I don't know if they should have released the 21-minute diatribe on the whole thing. That probably didn't
That
help.
didn't help.
Once they got their ruling, they probably, like he said, Mimo always says, they should have just shut up.
Well, that
But
that played well to their audience,
it
the
did.
Texas Tech
So
folks.
what they're trying to do, but again, don't question their motive and what they're trying to do to help him. I think that was all legitimate. We could have a debate on whether if he was a third or tackle, if he would have gotten the same um, public support of whether he should play or not. Again, I'm not going to question whether they would have helped him with the treatment, but course always get more love. So I have a belief
Sure.
that that was probably the case. Um, Again, playing college athletics is a privilege. A very small percentage of people ever get to play any level, whether it's D3, whatever. It's a small percentage of people who get to play college sports. Um, the schools, and this is something that Sark said, and I've heard some other people say it, and Sark said it before this, by the way. It had nothing to do with this thing. I did hear, I don't know if you did you hear what he said about Texas Tech and who's going to be their starting quarterback if all these injunctions keep going? He said he expects that by the fall, and he really wasn't even talking about, he was talking about a lot. He said, but if we keep going down the road of injunctions, we're going down. He fully expects Patrick Mahomes will be starting for Texas Tech in the fall. So I thought that was it, with all the
Well,
back and forth with Tech. I thought that was pretty fun.
that.
Absolutely, I would not like it as a Texas fan. It never worked out before. I like Mahomes a lot, but I did not like him when he was playing in Lubbock. That didn't go great.
Right.
But one of the things Sark said is, once schools and athletes decide they're going to participate in the NCAA, that's an organization. And again, this is one of my fundamental problems, along with the privilege of playing a sport, is if you're going to be a member of these organizations, and everybody talks about it. We've talked about it previously on podcast. Is the NCAA has become powerless? Yes, and it's
Mhm.
like Congress, and we talked about that. Who took the power and who gave the power? Well, the NCAA was not efficient at managing rules and doing investigations. So as they prove somewhat's not the right words. They proved incompetent. We'll say other people taking over those roles and responsibilities and doing it differently. But it gets to be a real problem when every eligibility discussion question is not handled by the NCAA conferences, and we've seen that. And again, Texas Tech is just one of many, from Trinidad Chambliss to go down the list of all the different players and that are trying to get their ninth year of eligibility or whatever the case is. And because of the NCAA and the antitrust issues, it goes to court, and it really is how the transfer portal started blowing up. Is when these kids were told they couldn't transfer, they went to court, and then that was kind of a slippery slope that ended up where we are now. Um, Really concerns me most about this trend of using the courts to get what you want is the NCAA's been weakened to the point where they're irrelevant, and it continues to get worse. And I think if we don't do that, this whole discussion of super conference, or super leagues or whatever, and the, because although I don't think you're either one like the concept of what the NCAA does, I don't think many people do. Having some governing body that governs college athletics seems like it's necessary.
Right.
And standing that back up seems like an important thing. It's interesting. I think something else this whole case revealed was not on, and specifically around football, but it plays in other places too, but it's very evident in football, is that the NCAA has no power. We've known that, but that the conferences and things kind of keeping, again, specifically college football within some level of completely off the rails. The courts are doing it, but the conferences, and I think you see that once the Texas Attorney General stepped in and said what could and couldn't happen, the Big 12 said, okay, cool, we'll just start fining you, and then you're not going to get to participate in the postseason. And they can control some of that. And I think that was what really, I mean, within hours, you saw both Cody and the AD at Texas Tech and Sorsby all say, yeah, I think we're going to quit pushing this. And I think that's really kind of what put it in a box finally. Um, and I think, is there a time for the courts? Well, I think if again, we go back and look, it's not a right, it's a privilege. But yeah, there may something means it needs to go to court. But right now it seems to be the default rather than, the primary thing. And again, I think the conferences, and unfortunately it's not four conferences working in a representative republic that all have an equal vote and representation. It's the Big Ten, the SEC, and then the other two, and then below that, everybody else has running college football. And you kind of just saw that with the Big 12 step
Mhm. Yeah.
did. So again, I think I want to, and you and I both want. I want to hear what you got to say. I talked a lot, but I want to hear what you got to say. And I think that it's not dissimilar from what we talked about last week or the previous weeks of how to fix all this. Again, talking about
Yeah.
this one thing, whether he played or the problem was still going to be the problem, and it's got to be fixed.
Right. Right. Well, obvious Tech grad. Almost a dozen of my in-laws, um, from Texas Tech. Both of my parents grew up in 15 miles of Texas Tech and Lubbock. Both sides of my family, cotton farmers for generations there. So
Y'all have thrown a
I
lot of
knew going.
tortillas in your life, is what I hear. A lot of
That's
frozen
right.
tortillas have flown out of the Blair and relatives' hands. So
So I knew going into this that our biases that you can stipulate to, you can recognize, you try to dodge them, but it becomes very difficult. Everybody feels that about their school. Okay, so you get really defensive. So as I was looking at this particular, first of all, was just ruling. And by the way, so everybody knows that was not a Lubbock, it was a Lubbock courthouse because a Lubbock court because that is where the injunction relief was filed. But this guy had no ties to Texas Tech. Beside the point.
Cody Camel was probably able to find his PO box efficiently, though.
Oh,
So
I would imagine that's probably true. But
he's now part
if
of the
he wanted to.
collective, and yeah,
But so I decided, I wanted to get because I didn't understand all of the legalese. I kind of understand the concept. So I've got a lot of friends that I went to school with at Texas Tech that ended up being attorneys. Most all of them went to Tech School of Law. Most of them are practicing law in Lubbock and the environs there. But I have one friend that was very close to in college. He was part of a group of about 4 guys that I ran around with, and he did not go to Texas Tech. He went to Lubbock College, and he hates Texas Tech with a passion and always has. And this is over 50 years ago, and he still
that's
hates
funny.
Texas Tech with a passion. He believes that when he was at Lubbock Christian, that everybody in Lubbock, and particularly the student body at Texas Tech, looked down on them, called them a community college, and that's all true.
I was gonna say he's not wrong, probably. Yeah, yeah.
It's exactly how he was treated. And so he went on then got his master's degree at Abilene Christian University and a law degree from the University of Texas. But then he went back to Lubbock to practice law, which is weird. But his wife's family was there, and so he went back there and has practiced law for over 50 years. And so I called him and I said, Keith, fill me in. What's the story? I said, were you surprised by the judge granting the injunction? And he, first of all, let me tell you, I still hate Texas Tech. I hope they lose every game in every sport that they participate in from
That's
now
awesome.
until the end of eternity. But he said he and his colleagues, obviously, and his friends in the legal profession had been discussing this. And he said they were almost 100% in agreement that the judge had no other choice, that he could
Yep.
make no other decision. And I said, okay, then clear the air. I don't understand that. And I said, I did not expect it. He said basically the NC2A had 3 problems. Number 1 is their lack of antitrust exemption. So he said, I don't care what the rule is.
Yep.
In the NC2A, it can be challenged in court.
Yep.
And he said, these days it probably will point in time. So he said, that's an issue for another discussion. But he said, that is something that they are going to have to live with unless they change their structure and how they treat athletes from a
Yep.
legal and an employment perspective, et cetera.
Yep.
So he said that's number 1. But he said that they had basically 2 problems. He said if you read through the NCAA's constitution, and they have a whole section on the support of students who have mental health issues. And he said, if you read through that and they talk about their commitment, he said, even they will admit that the rule against gambling is in direct conflict with their constitution. And they still say, well, but it has to override because it's so critical to the integrity of the game. But he says that's a problem from a legal perspective.
Yeah.
He
Yep.
said that is a real problem. And he said the other thing that's not illegal, but he said it will color the decisions of the judiciary is the NC2A's embracing of gambling
Yeah.
and giving information to gambling platforms. Granted, it's only data, but he said that they have embraced that as a revenue stream.
Yeah, they started
And
the injury
then to
report
come
in
in,
college
he said,
football for one reason. They started for the same reason the NFL has an injury report. I mean, it's interesting. I heard Sark talk in detail about it. They started releasing those for two reasons. And the piece I didn't know, and Matt Brown talked about it as well. I knew why they were releasing it. It's clearly for gambling. Tom
mhm,
Brady and Bill Belichick got in trouble when Brady was with the Patriots because he had questionable with a left shoulder injury for like 10 games one season. And the
mhm,
NFL finally said you can't do it. Well, and they can't do it because that starts a lot of the lines. Those
right,
those injury reports are all about Vegas. Well, I didn't even think about this. Sark was so glad that they started doing it because the training staff, everybody that's in those athletic facilities was getting worn out by gamblers, by Vegas
mhm,
trying to get inside knowledge. Injury report took some of that off. And Sark even said that there were some really to some training staff and everything. It was very intriguing
mhm.
what was
I
going
can believe.
on because it was going. Oh, yeah, I fully agree. Make no mistake, the injury reports exist because of gambling.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Keith pointed me to something. He said, if you haven't, he said, read it. And then he said, I'm going to send you some notes that might help you. And it was bylaw 10.3, which we've all heard about now. Okay. Which deals specifically, uh, NC2A's regulations or rules concerning gambling. So I've got some of those notes, and I hate to read, but this is important. And I know that I would misspeak if I didn't, but doesn't just, which has always been an issue, but it comprehensively bans student athletes from engaging in any sports wagering activities. And it very explicitly states that the athletes cannot solicit bets, they can't accept bets, they can't participate in gambling activity that involves intercollegiate or professional athletics. Now, that's kind of the broad definition of 10.3. Uh, they allow the rule allows the NC to 2A and individual schools to permanently ban athletes for gambling, and they've got three mechanisms that are in place. One is there is a very broad prohibition of gambling activities. So, 10 points that athletes cannot knowingly participate in any wagering activity. Now, this includes using a bookmaker, a parlay card, internet gambling apps, or, and this is a kicker, participating in March Madness pools or fantasy league require an entry fee and offer a prize. Not money, but any kind of a prize. And it also, that applies to all levels. The prohibition is against gambling on any institutional practice or competition in a sport where the NC2A conducts championships. This means that athletes are barred from any level NC2A collegiate game, an amateur event, professional sports leagues, and then penalties. And It's a part of the reinstatement guidelines. If you bet on your own team or school, you have the loss ability. That's what Sorsby falls
Right.
under. If you bet on other collegiate games that uh, align with an NC2A sponsor sport, you of your eligibility. And then when it comes to professional sports, if it's less than $200, you have to go through an educational process. At um, $800 and above, you lose 30% of your eligibility. Okay, whatever that means, but that's how they deal with professional sports. Legal scholars, retired justices, judges, or attorneys have all come to the same conclusion in terms of their of the. So Annie decides that he wants to do a little he wants to do a little camaraderie and little team building with his offensive team. So he gets the 11 of his 11 starters together, and it's NC2A basketball time. And he says, we're going to put together a little March Madness us 11, and everybody's going to pitch in $10. And the winner gets a $110 gift card to Applebee's. They they now are giving up 50% of their eligibility, and if
Yep.
Texas is in the NC2A tournament, which most likely they are, those guys just lost their eligibility.
Yep.
And so here's if indeed that's true, then Texas Tech should demand that every AD and every coach do a comprehensive investigation, every athlete in every athletic staff member in every sport at their college, and see how many of them have participated in a March Madness pool in
Oh,
which
yeah.
they had to pay to enter, or a fantasy football or fantasy basketball league. And I will guarantee you, you would have a large number of athletes that would be either permanently or partially banned from playing. And
Well,
people can
one,
say, well, that's stupid. There's no way that you can police that. I'm
it's the
sorry.
rule.
What I'm hearing, and that's the thing, I'm hearing from people, hey, he broke a rule.
Yep.
And so he pays the penalty. Now, this is probably an example of the NC2A coming up with rules that they cannot enforce, that they
It's the
can't
cream cheese
police.
on bagel rules. I mean, again, that's where the NCAA lost respect is when you could have a bagel, but you couldn't put cream cheese on it. Sark
Yeah,
put in a peanut
yeah.
butter grinder with peanuts because he couldn't have peanut butter, but they could offer peanuts. I mean, there's just this falls within that. And I think the other thing that this brings up, I didn't even think about, not for preparing for this, but how the heck has Cincinnati and Indiana gotten off so
Oh,
nobody cares
oh,
about
that's
what
a
they've
very
done?
good question,
I mean,
especially with the
Texas
latest
Tech brought him on and didn't
revelation.
even know, and supposedly Cincinnati knew the whole dang time he was doing it.
Right. Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
that's what really annoys me. Texas Tech is annoying because they're trying to get him back on the field, but he's never played a game for Texas Tech on.
Right.
But he did at Cincinnati and Indiana, and Cincinnati now supposedly knew about it. So how the heck
Right.
is nobody talking about them? Especially if you think about it. That really bothered that as much as it bothered me what Texas Tech was trying to do to get him to play. He hasn't bet on a game. To me, it's because trying to get in the Hall of Fame as a play manager. It's two separate things. Well, to me, this is almost two separate. Cincinnati and Indiana have gotten nothing on them from this. Is shocking to
Right.
me.
Yeah, it really is. It's hard to comprehend. The other thing is, there's been so much vitriol, and I'm very disappointed in a lot of football coaches out there. And sorry, Kirby, I think you just lost most of my respect. But anyway, coming down on Texas Tech and their athletic director and their coach, and saying, "Hey, just don't let the guy play. Okay, you guys can control that." Well, again, my attorney friend who hates Texas Tech, and he said, and I hate to even say this, but he said they have no choice. He said, once the injunction prohibiting the NC2A from interfering with Sorsby's opportunity to play in the 2026 season was granted, neither Texas Tech nor Joey McGuire could deny him the opportunity to play without also being sued
Yeah,
by
I heard that.
Sorsby and his team.
If
And
they
he
were going
said,
to do
most
something, they would have had
probably
to do it.
losing.
Yeah, as soon as he
Right.
got his attorney, he got Brady's attorney. I believe that's where they screwed up. Is at that point, if they knew that this was a possibility and they didn't want all the blowback, that's where they would have had to looked at him and said, "Hey, unfortunately, you keep the $5 million, but you're not part of Texas." Once he did
Yeah.
that, yeah, they're in a tough spot.
Well, and becomes, could he still have sued them?
Yeah,
I
it's
mean, I don't
hard to
know.
say.
I
It
mean, it's
appears you
hard to
can sue
say.
for anything, and so maybe, yeah,
Right.
for sure.
And, so I posited to Keith. I said, okay, let's say I'm Coach McGuire, who that my family knows him very well, because he went to my high school, and my sister taught him when he was in school there. So I said, I'm McGuire, and I just say, okay, fine. I'll just sit him on the bench. He said, that won't fly with the courts. He said, now, if he wasn't performing, certainly he has the right to bench him. And he said, and he could put very high standards in place. And let's face it, the quarterback that Texas Tech has got that's recovering from the ACL injury, if he hadn't had that injury last year, we wouldn't be talking about this because
Right.
this kid's great.
Yeah.
But he said, if he is being outperformed, yes, the coach. But if the courts look at this and say this is obvious, Texas Tech is, then he said you'd have the same problem.
And I
So I
think
was just saying
one point
that
with it, I think that's where it gets dangerous too, with the courts being involved, because for
mhm,
that to be hanging over a coach's head specifically, I don't care much about the AD, but for the coach to have that hanging over their head, to have to make that decision based on what the court said, that's where it gets a little wonky too when the courts get involved, is because then you can't really run the program the way it needs to be run.
right,
There's
right.
just nothing
Well,
good
the
about
note,
courts being involved in college athletics. And, I mean, and we're sitting here fleshing that out.
right. The note that I concluded this part with was that those that are demanding that Texas Tech and Joey McGuire ignore the judge's decision and remove Sorsby from the team would never do it themselves. They hide behind that word integrity, which I think they obviously don't know the meaning of. Okay. So it's easy to call out the other guy and say, this is what you ought to be doing. But there is no way they are going to ignore a ruling by a sitting judge, knowing that that same team that just defeated the NC2A is now going to come after them individually and severally, and they're going to have to deal with it. So they would not do it. There are those who say, "Oh, yes, I would." I ain't buying it. I'm sorry. Now, something else that surprised me, and I'm not trying to prove a point here. I just want it's something for people to think about. I did a little research, and in the entire history of college, one accusation of a game being thrown in the NFL, and that was the 1946 New York Giants versus Chicago Bears. Didn't know anything about it. Two Giants players were ultimately banned from the league. One of them admitted to being approached by gamblers to throw the game. The other, who was the quarterback, Frank Filchek, denied uh, he was involved in this. It's interesting. He threw six in this game, and the Giants, although he went to his grave denying that he threw the game, he
Yeah.
did interceptions. But anyway, and then in the NC2A, just going back to 1984, okay, no further back than that, there have been three instances in which teams have been accused of point shaving. That was the 2005 Toledo team. It was the 1995 Northwestern team and the 1984 Tulane team. I don't think any of that, but there were strong suggestions that points were being shaved there. Now,
Mac Brown
since
actually
the
got caught
19,
up in the Tulane one because he became the de facto AD when that all happened, because their AD got fired. It was interesting. He was talking about it the other day on the podcast. I think it's interesting too with football. Basketball appears to be the most susceptible, and there's been more
yes,
issues with it.
and
In
probably the
football,
easiest to throw a game.
it is. It's easier for the referees to affect the outcome just
Mhm.
by nature of the number of people involved that it takes to score points in football and stop people from scoring points. Referee control, but it becomes more obvious. Quarterbacks clearly have the most ability to, but it
I would
becomes
say
obvious.
quarterbacks, and I would say who else? Kickers.
Receivers
I
and
think
kickers.
quarterbacks and kickers
Receivers would be in there
can
because they could drop
influence.
balls, but
Yeah,
it takes more people. In basketball, one player can have an off night
yeah,
shooting and not score well, or a ref can do something. So I fully
right.
agree.
But anyway, since the 1984 season, which was the Tulane
Yeah.
debacle, there have been approximately 75,000 college football games played between FBS, FCS Division II, and Division III, with three instances accusations maybe. That means that point shaving or cheating point wise in football has happened 0.00004% of the time. And in each of these instances, it had nothing to do with the players gambling anything. They were all approached by gamblers to shave points or to throw games. What we should be doing, I think, is using our technology and hopefully the smarts of our coaching staffs to be able to identify when you've got players that are negatively impacting the scores of games. We're making this assumption that someone who has gambled is going to gamble against his team and then throw the game or shave points. First of all, that is red flag after red flag. What player is going to be stupid enough to do that? I don't know, but maybe it happens. Maybe it could happen. But I think also we need to include in this discussion coaches that refuse to play their best players in the last couple of games of the season because they've already got their position in the CFP locked up. Impacts the game. That impacts the game. We're not seeing the quality of the game that was because half the team is sitting on the bench. I mean, I think there's a lot to this. I just wanted to throw that out there. Now,
Let me
our
ask you a
friend
question
Josh,
related. Let
go
me
ahead.
ask you a question related to all that because I agree. I mean, I think it's especially in football is very minimal. Other sports, it's worse. Baseball,
Yeah,
it's happened.
sure.
I'm I'm curious if there's some hypocrisy involved in this. Um, I wonder if it's because they're worried about it. Because specifically, we'll talk NCAA football. They've invited in DraftKings, FanDuel, every other sports betting, app company that you can possibly come up with. Everything's brought to you by FanDuel, DraftKings. I wonder if there's a concern that there could be a perception that is going on, and they
Hmm.
created the perception by bringing all this in. But I wonder
Right,
if they're a little nervous. It's kind of the people who live in glass houses do through times, and they probably shouldn't.
right.
But I wonder if there's a little bit of that. I haven't thought much
Yeah,
about it. Of they've
I hadn't
invited all
either,
this
but
in,
that's
it's become such a
yeah,
big part of the ecosphere. Um, why has this been such a big issue? Well, again, it's on a team because if the team's not going to the CFP, that's an easy way for Vegas. That's how those Iowa State kids got caught. If you start
right,
putting any significant amount of money on a team, go bet on the UNA Lions playing Division II football. You're
right,
you're going to get caught pretty quickly because Vegas
right,
sees that and they police it. But on teams who are playing at a high level, specifically going to the college football playoff, there's a lot of action on those teams. And that
right.
action, a lot of it's being created by all the hype around DraftKings, FanDuel, sports betting on mobile phones via apps. I just wonder if, there's a little bit of it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you create that environment, maybe it does happen. And I wonder if they're worried about that.
I
I
think
have no way to
I
prove
hadn't
that. I
thought
just think
about
it's an
that.
interesting point.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but you could be right. I mean, the NC2A has embraced it. They're taking the revenue. They're feeding the data. We're apps available to making it so easy for this to happen.
Yep.
And everybody's surprised. And yet with all of these athletes, we're going to protect the integrity of the game. But we've talked about how much we love Josh Pate, and I still do. I
Yep.
believe he's probably done more good for the college football fan than just about anybody on the planet. And I will support his nomination as football. But when his podcasts are sponsored by gambling platforms and he admits to placing bets on college games, he cannot talk about the integrity of the game. Sorry, you can't do it because of his close relationship that he has with coaches, the access that he has to their programs that is not available to the general public. Uh, he has that information that the rest of us don't have. That is the very definition of insider trading. I'm sorry. It doesn't mean that it might not meet the benchmark of the law, but it tells me that he's betting on these platforms on college football when he has access and has information he has said on his show.
Yeah.
I haven't shared this information because I wasn't given the authority to share this
Yeah.
information.
Well,
So don't
ironically,
tell me you don't have
I've got on my Rogan shirt tonight, and he's talked a lot about this on his podcast. Especially, he hasn't recently, but He's talked about it recently, but a number of years ago when he started calling UFC, he started, most people don't know, calling UFC fights in Dothan, Alabama. Big chain,
I didn't
30
know where
years.
it was. I knew that he did
Dothan,
that.
Alabama. He did like the first 13 he did for free all the way to the White House. So they've gone a lot different route. But he talked about it. He used to bet on UFC fights, specifically so much fighting of people from overseas and different things. He would call Dana and say, Dana, you're not going to believe this guy. He's part of who saw Conor McGregor before Dana did. Joe was one of the guys. And so when these guys would come into the UFC and fight their first fight, most people, including Vegas, knew nothing about them. But Joe did. He'd been watching him in other leagues and different things. And he finally, he doesn't love gambling anyway. Dana does love gambling. He's a notorious gambler for a lot of money. He got kicked out of a casino for taking too much money. It happened to be one of the casinos he fought had his fights at, and he said he won't have fights there anymore. So I don't know if they actually won that battle. But Joe voluntarily quit betting on UFC fights because he said he felt like he had too much information. Now there is a controversy even right now in UFC because the other sport that we didn't throw in, any combat sports is super easy to throw as well. But then there's knowledge
Mhm.
of injuries and other things that go into that where somebody could be hurt a whole camp. So there's always been issues in boxing and other
Right.
combat sports. But he quit. There's actually an investigation right now in the UFC over some potential throwing of fights, and
Right.
they've got strict rules now. The fighters and the trainers, nobody associated with the fighters, and I don't think like what you're saying. You've got inside
Yeah.
knowledge if you're that close to the game.
Well, plus, Carl, I'll tell you that anyone who's been around sports for the last 60 years, as I have, knows that there is no integrity in sports. People who believe that still believe that the earth is flat and that Ozzie and Harriet represent the average American family. And, we've been paying players, we've been loaning them new cars, we've been comping, been providing them with women for as long for players in sports. And anybody who says that it is simply lying. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that is what is. It is what has been. And so I get tired of us beating this word integrity to death, um, because I don't think anybody even knows what it means, and they're going to apply it specifically to elevate their own agenda, and to think that one place with a diagnosed mental health issue who has never bet against his own team is somehow going to ruin the so-called integrity of the game. That's laughable. And so I don't want to hear that word. Okay. You want to tell me that there's rules and the rules need to be followed? I understand that. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with integrity. Okay. But I guess the last thing I wanted to say about this is there's a much greater issue. At least there's an issue here that is a much greater concern to me. And that's what's going to happen to this young man. What's going to happen to Brendan Sorsby? The NCAA has acknowledged he has a serious mental health issue and a serious addiction to gambling. So even though he's decided to enter the supplemental draft, I'm concerned about how he's going to navigate long path addiction without the support of his teammates, the structure of college, the focus on being the best that he can be so that he can help the success of his team. Uh, Anybody who has experienced addiction knows that the critical keys or some of the critical keys to fighting addiction are structure and support, pursuit of healthy activities that you enjoy or passionate about, and developing and maintaining close relationships with people who are legitimately concerned about you and that you can count on. Much of that has been taken away from Brendan Sorsby. And I wonder, where is the integrity in that? Um, One can hope that he will find that in whatever he lands with. But in the interim, and he's been under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress and a lot of public scrutiny, and he's been called everything in the book out there, none of which has helped his condition. And I'm wondering how many people out there who are involved in these discussions really, and quite honestly, I got a feeling a vast majority of them don't. They say, well, kid made a mistake. He's got to live with the consequences. Uh, Anybody out there who's dealt with addiction knows better.
Yeah, man.
So to me, that's the bigger issue here. Whether Texas Tech is not going to get kicked out of the Big 12. And even if they are Big 12, because they're going to end up winning the championship the next 9 years in a row. That might happen. But so I don't know. That was kind of what, to me, that's I don't want that issue to get lost. I'm not
Yeah,
going to say it's the most important issue. I don't want it to get lost. And
yeah. I think two things. I want to end. Well, I want to go back to that, but the first piece, the integrity thing, and you and I had offline discussions on this, and I agree. I agree mostly with what you're saying. I think the interesting thing, I think people are gymnastics because I think integrity is the wrong word for what, at least what I believe. It really is the competitive foundation of it on the field. Because and that's what they're doing, and I'm by people, I mean me. I know what I've done, the mental gymnastics I've done around this. Talking about the integrity of the game, and again, I thought about that when you challenged me on that the other day. That it really is the competitive. It's ensuring the competitive nature of the game on the field is intact. Okay, so that take, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I think this is what people are doing because this is what I've been doing is we're so locked in that we got to make sure that the motives are pure and they're trying to make their team win. That's really what we're talking about, whatever words we want to use. But what's really funny is before you get everybody, all the 11 people on each side of the field banging each other in the head, before we get to that point, how you got there doesn't matter because NIL and better parties and Texas is firing up all the Lambos when the seniors in high school are walking in. all all of that is a complete free.
right,
Whether it's women and whatever all is involved in recruiting right now, and it's a full on bunch of debauchery and craziness at some places that we seem to be okay with. So that
right, right.
as long as you do everything before you walk on the 100-yard long and, then there, whatever you do outside there, whatever you're taking, everybody joked about Alabama using deer antler spray and everything. Whatever you do there,
Yeah. Mhm.
all those your motives when you come on the field, you want to win, and don't
Right.
bet on what I think it's. You're right. There's been a lot of mental gymnastics to say I don't care about all that stuff. The bag man for years, everything else, we're good with all that, and now it's legalized. Still good with it. Um, this one thing because by the way, all those things were rules too. The
Mhm.
cream cheese on bagels were a rule. A March Madness tournament is a rule. Nobody cared about those and they thought they were stupid. So yeah, I think that is an intriguing exercise in how you get there of the pieces we're going to preserve the integrity of and the pieces we're going to choose to not preserve the integrity of and we're okay with some and not others. So inconsistent at best, I think
Yeah.
is the problem of how people. Um, I couldn't agree more with you. I talked about this offline about the Sorsby piece, and I think two things, and I think both can be true. You can't sacrifice entire organization and everybody because of the one person and one person that
Mhm.
broke the rules. That said, you absolutely can care about that person and take care of that person and do everything that needs to be done to support him. And there
Right.
are consequences to decisions, unfortunately. But I do think, fully agree with you. It's gotten a young guy who's had a lot of things said negatively about him. And that's, one thing I've not participated in that with anybody. It really has been non-personal from anything I've said about him because I really don't care. It's not about him to
Mhm.
me. It's more about the disaster that is college football specifically and the courts and everything else involved. I feel the same way about Trinidad Chambliss getting another year and all these people getting their eighth and ninth seasons. I think it's all silliness. Um,
Yeah.
well, it's silliness until you're that person and you could make more, may not even get to play in the NFL, you know, whether you're Diego Pavia or whoever you are. Another year in college could change your it definitely would change your trajectory as a family, if you made several $100,000 or a couple million is. Now, if you piss it all away, I guess it doesn't matter, but it is personal to each one of those people, and I think this is a tough subject, and Mac Brown has talked a lot about. He's very passionate about this subject. He can't stand it, and it's you're seeing it outside. It's going to happen in college athletics. It just is not yet. You're seeing, and I've heard Dave Ramsey talk about it. Seeing it specifically 20-something-year-old males right now is the biggest group that it's hitting. They're going into major financial debt or losing everything they had or both and committing suicide because they don't see a way out of it.
Yeah.
And then and that's just the average, 27-year-old that's doing this right now. Throw on top of that, you might lose your career and everything else, and you've definitely lost college football. What if he doesn't get picked up in the supplemental draft?
Right.
I told you this before live recording. I do hope that he's able to find whatever the best case scenario is for him. And and maybe in
Right.
30 years we'll look back and there'll be an interview with him. I won't be here to see it probably, maybe. I don't know. I won't remember it if I do. Um, but it may be that the best thing that ever happened to have a great quality of life and a good family is to not be involved in football. I don't know that. I don't know what the answer is, but I genuinely hope whatever that is, if it were my son, I would want it to work out well, and he is
Mhm.
somebody else's son, and I hope it does work out well. It's not a personal thing against that kid for me, and I do agree the things that have been said about him and everything else. I don't think people consider that if they've got kids as if it was their own kid, or they probably wouldn't have said some of the things they've said. So my problem's never been with him. It's more of a institutional issue that I've got
Yeah.
than a him issue.
Well, let me point out one thing, for us to think about. I have heard multiple people, including yourself, say, what we don't want is people watching a game and questioning whether the fix is in terms of the performance that you're seeing. For how many decades have we all sat in the stands or screamed at our TV that the refs were throwing, or the umpires were throwing the game, that they were for the other team. They were going to see to it that Texas beat Nebraska. I mean, those kinds of things.
Every
We've
week.
been saying that, and people believe it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But we haven't done, that has not, nobody has said, well, that has ruined the integrity of the game. We might as well just blow up the sport. This is not that different. Okay.
The
We've
one
been,
piece Josh Pate has done full scenarios on that. I think you bring up a good point, and I don't think it's because they're all betting on sports, but the inconsistency in official ball is a train wreck. I think it's just one
Mhm.
more thing that's a train wreck, but it does bring into question. I mean, and again, it's another thing that brings into question. I don't think people are necessarily questioning it. Some do because they're truly betting on games. I don't. I think that's silly. Are there some that have? Probably over the years. Statistics say yes. But I think the inconsistency into question when you can't figure out what pass interference is and some of the other what targeting is. There's no consistency. You based on statistics and how often all that happens and the statistics you threw out there about gambling, probably want to fix officiating before we worry about fixing the gambling problem that doesn't really exist in college football.
Well, here's the other thing. For those doomed prophets out there who say, we don't get this straightened out, we're going to lose the sport. No, we're not. WWE has been scripted for decades, and we know it, and it's growing. So even though there is that chance, and we've questioned boxing for decades, and with good reason, and it hasn't stopped the sport. It's not going to stop the sport. I'm not saying we just let it go.
Right.
I'm not going to say that we just let guys kowtow to big, well-heeled gamblers and start shaving, etc. There are ways to, I think, to identify that, certainly to question it and bring it before a commission or something that's involved with sports. But for those who are saying, well, then people are just going to quit watching football. No, they're not. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
We are a sports addicted population in America, and really kind of around the world,
Yeah.
as we see with the World Cup. So,
Well, how is it
I'm
this
not
is
saying
funny to
we don't
me.
try to
How
go
is it
ahead.
that in the NBA and everybody used to I was a huge Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls fan. The entire time he
Mhm.
was there, I watched as many games as I could, but those guys were notorious for it. They
Yeah,
always managed to win the freaking world champion. How does
yeah,
that always end up happening, whether they played a little harder or a little less? It's shocking, and specifically in basketball. It happens in hockey a lot too, where
yeah,
magically, if you get another game at home, you get more revenue and everything else. And a lot of times those games, even with the dominant
yeah,
teams, shocking how a lot of them end up going 6 or 7 games, and it
yeah.
works out
The
where
the
you end up
Nets
back at
the
home.
Nets haven't yeah, the Nets haven't quite figured that out yet, but they haven't got enough championships to
That's
to
right.
learn how to
Yeah.
do that. Let me ask you this, without us going into a great deal of detail, how can we fix this issue? What does the NC2A need to do to or the conferences? I don't know who's supposed to do it. How do we deal with this moving forward and happen again?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's similar to everything else that we've talked about. I think it's pretty easy in concept. I think it's really hard in practice. I think the first thing is it's no different than the cream cheese, but the way the rule is written is ridiculous. Sense. Who cares if guys go out on a golf course and bet $10 a hole, or they have an NCAA March Madness pool, as long as they're not NCAA basketball players, they're in the March Madness thing. But to me, it could be simplified a lot, like a lot of things, whether it's laws or rules in sports. Simplify it and make it make more sense. If you can give somebody a bagel, you should probably be able to give them a bagel with cream cheese. They fixed
Right,
a lot of that with NIL and other things, but to me, that rule could be simplified to what most people think it actually really is. I did go look at it, just like you said, and I was a little shocked by the things that were in there. Um, it, make it very simple. You can't bid on it's highly advisable, and the teams could do it. You're not going to bet on any sports, and we're going to enforce from an any NCAA perspective. We'll care about back to the competitive balance of it. You don't want them betting on their sport. Again, it's
right,
healthier if you don't bet on sports, period. That would be better, and the teams could do some of that. But at the end of the day, betting on your sport is the thing. You got to have one simple rule: no betting on your sport. You get a lifetime ban. It's kind of what Major League Baseball's got. I mean, they've got a pretty simple rule that's very well known in the clubhouses. Um, I think you got to simplify that rule. I think that's the gambling piece, and then the second piece is get the courts out of rules so that there could be rules enforced. But I do think there's a bigger conversation. I don't think this is the last one of these in college. I don't think that it's the last one you're going to see in the NFL or any other professional sports. The NFL has navigated it better, but now they've jumped in worse having a team in Vegas. It was funny for years they wouldn't
mhm,
put a team in, but everybody knows the reason some of these games are being watched. When you walk into a bar in a town that doesn't have an NFL football team, and everybody's passionately watching the Philadelphia Eagles and Dallas Cowboys and don't care about either team, is because half of them have a bet placed on it. So the
right,
NFL has been navigating these waters well for a while. Back to you and I've said this a lot. I think college football could lean on the NFL a little bit too, and the other college sports that have the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball lean on how they've done it. They've navigated this better for a long time than what college appears to be doing right now, but you don't see as much of it, and they deal with it pretty swiftly. But again, funky rules there nobody can even understand. You've got to have an attorney to interpret them. It leaves yourself very open for what that looks like, and they're going to have to also unscrew the conflict. And I saw this even before you brought it up. I'd heard somebody else talk about it, the conflict between the addictive piece and gambling. They're going to have to figure out how to make that not in direct conflict and be able to make it enforceable, which also you've brought up in the past. If they're not even your employees, that's a bigger problem of how you enforce these things because they're not technically employees. So I think
right.
there's a number
You
of
know
little things that are going to have to be fixed. The first thing gets back to you got to have a governing body with a named commissioner. I did see Josh Pate the other night. I forget the name of it's up in something. I was on there the other day, and she told him that because of his passion, she told him he's very unique, and I do believe he's unique. And a number of coaches will tell you, Saban did, and other ones that they didn't watch college football. They prepared for their games. They didn't care. He loves college football. He sits and watches college football on the off weeks all day, every day, And she said, "I think you're one of the few coaches who loves to watch games the way you do. You should be the next commissioner of college football." Josh Pate posted this.
Yeah.
So,
It's interesting, this what get if you wanna talk about a danger to maybe losing the sport or at least losing it as we know it. I had friends here, as you know, from Huntsville, really close friends, who mentioned to me that they have a son who is tied to the TV every Sunday for the NFL games, watching all the games, and it's because he bets. And my friend said, I asked him, said, "Well, who's winning?" "I don't know. I don't care." He's betting on, you know, how many yards is this running back going to get?
yep,
How many first downs is this team going to get?
yep,
How many punts are there going to be in the game? In other words, he's interested in specific little pieces of the game, but he's not interested in the whole. There are a lot of people falling into that.
yes,
And so, what does that mean for the future of the game? Where no one cares anything, how many field goals is this guy going to miss in
yep,
this game? Because that's what I've got the bet on.
yep,
What the answer is to that. But you did touch on one thing. And I think if there's one thing that will at least move us along toward avoiding this, we've got to make them employees. I love Cody Campbell and all he's done for my alma mater, but he's absolutely wrong when he says you can't do that. It might not be easy. It might be something that he would prefer not to do, but yes, you can make them employees. Once you do that, you can get the limited antitrust exemption. Now, make your rules and you can tell them you don't follow them, you're out.
that's right.
This is a penalty. And let them collectively bargain, let them put together a college football players association. We all know that they're nothing but a minor league, they're minor league clubs for the NFL anyway. Let's
Yep,
be honest, guys. It has changed. It's not like it was in my day, where all Texas Tech wanted to do was beat Texas. All Texas wanted to do was beat Texas A&M and M and Oklahoma, and that's what mattered.
yep.
But we're beyond because the way that the money has changed the game and that sort of thing. So let's understand what it is. But I think if we could empower, whether it's the NC2A or someone else that follows up on them, to actually have rules that you can enforce without for a judge.
I wonder
And we're
why,
not
man.
there. We're
Cody,
not there right now.
when I told you the other day, I saw Cody had posted something on X. I believe he got sidetracked a couple of weeks, but he was supposedly going to put out a document or something that explained why. And again, I, for somebody who's done all the things he's done and is entrepreneurial, it's a silly statement for him to say something can't happen. I think that's really
Can't be
stupid.
done. Right.
He
Right.
clearly has an ulterior motive because he's proven you can pretty much do whatever the heck you want to.
Right.
He's become a self-made billionaire, so I don't know what he can and can't do. But I was very curious to see what he was going to say, and I think it was going to, and maybe he decided he wasn't going to put that out. You can absolutely. The word can't is a silly word. It can absolutely be
Right.
done, and it solves a lot of problems. There are reasons people don't want to do it, and
Oh,
there's
yes. I
advantages to it
understand
not
that.
happening.
Yeah.
But at the end of the
Right.
day, it to me is the single piece and kind of the elephant in the middle of the room that if you fix that one thing, it takes care of a lot of other things around
Right.
eligibility. A
Right.
lot of these things that the courts and all that are doing is because they're not employees, and it makes it very
Yeah.
difficult.
And a lot of people are raising the red flag of, well, now you're bringing Title IX in and EEOC. No, you're not.
Because when the
I
NFL
mean,
cuts somebody, what
you've run enough corporations to
yeah.
know how to negotiate that
Well,
or
when the
how to
NFL
navigate that.
when the NFL cuts somebody for whatever reason, just
Right.
because they don't like them anymore, a good locker room fit. They don't in the court part of the team anymore, and nobody
Right.
complains about it. But yet in
Right.
college, it's like you're entitled to get to play college athletics. Well, like about it. It's a little
Right.
harder to fire somebody when they're a quote scholarship student athlete. That nobody
Right.
feels good about that, but that's not what these kids are anymore.
Well, let me ask you this before we close.
Yeah.
Is anything going to change?
If I had to bet, pun intended, I would say not in the short term.
Yeah.
This save we did the whole segment on the Save College Sports Act. Um, I think if we don't see changes, and I heard somebody though, I don't remember who it was. It was one of the doomsday people. Um, that if it doesn't get changed by the end of this year and the next transfer portal cycle, you're going to see a major issue. And you're seeing it in other
Yeah.
sports. You're seeing indications. I don't know if you're following this, but I figured now was a good time to point it out. I was kidding with Bob because he's talking about his three freshman pitchers that have pitched the last three games. I said, well, buckle up. They probably won't be there next year. They'll be somewhere
Yeah.
else. So I was pretty excited that the meme that was going around, if you can't beat them, join them. That one of Texas Tech's freshman softball pitchers decided to switch to the championship team, and she's leaving, coming to Texas. So I thought that was pretty good. They also got Florida State's. You know, it's already happening in other sports. You saw it a lot in basketball after the championship. The whole dang teams fall apart, even on the team that won the championship.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think you're going to see even more of that in football. It's one of the reasons either Kalen DeBoer is a genius or he's going to get fired soon because they're number 50 something in recruiting for the 2027 class right now. Now he claims he's got some things up his sleeve, but they're last in the SEC and 50 something in the nation. Um, Maybe he's decided he's not going to do any college recruiting at all, or high school recruiting at all. But it's going the game. You saw it a little bit last year with the number of people in the portal. This year, everybody's. And I don't think it's not being this predictive. It's looking at what's happening in all the sports.
Yeah.
Everybody who
Well, let
gets there, they all fall apart and go to another team. It's everybody's on a year to year contract, and you go figure out what you can do, and you just enter the market and see what happens.
let me close a warning to the members of the Big 12. You poke the bear, you're going to pay the consequences. I got news for Sonny Dykes, who has a history with Texas Tech, and unfortunately is not 1/10 the coach that his father was. If Texas Tech is leading TCU in the last game of the season 72 to nothing, and they've got the ball at the 15 at TCU's 15-yard line with 30 seconds left, they're going to use every timeouts. They're going to score again.
You think they'll go for two?
And that's going to be true with everybody out there. I don't see Texas Tech, and Texas Tech is going to win, in my opinion, the Big 12 because they're that much better than anybody else. They probably got the best running back room in the Big 12, and they've got a really good quarterback that'll be in by game 3 or 4. And even if not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean they can beat the SEC. Doesn't mean they can beat the Big 10.
Oh, they're by far the
But
best team in the Big 12. It's not even
but
close.
they are. It's going to be pedal to the metal against everybody because everybody in the conference has come out against Tech. And okay, do what you need to do, say what you need to say, and then try to back it up on the field. I think this is the kind of thing that even without Sorsby now has really solidified around. Everybody hates us. Great.
Oh, I was going to say
It's
Joey McGuire. He didn't catch as much shrapnel as the AD and Cody Campbell. They took Joey's just kind of sitting back as the coach, so it's good for him.
yeah.
But probably, and you and I've talked about this. What will tell the tale over the next few years for them is can you go get a new team every year like they're doing with as many transfers and have a culture? Well, for this team, I believe you're right. I believe Joey's got a rally cry. He'll get them all fired up, and I think they're going to be a problem for everybody in the
Well,
Big
and
12.
bear in mind, he's still got 6 high school recruiting class for 2026, number 3 for 2027.
Yep.
Is not doing everything through
No,
everybody thinks
he's not doing
everything
any
through
more than anybody
NFL.
else. They did the first year, but
No.
it doesn't look anything different than anybody else does now.
Right. Right.
They're just
Yeah.
spending a
And
lot of money, but so is everybody else. So
and he's got such an in with all of the high school coaches in the state of Texas. They
yeah,
love him.
yeah,
He's seeing athletes before Sark does.
yeah,
And it's only because they all know him. He's
yeah.
been there forever. So yeah, I'm not too worried about that. But I would just I don't see Texas Tech and Joey and them laying off on anyone this year just because they've got a big
Well, and
lead. Now they'll
I thought
they'll
it was
throw in some of the
intriguing.
other guys, but
Well, I thought it was intriguing as to who he is, and he is he likes the um what's his name? Kirby Smart's the same way. He loves and embraces the role. A lot of those coaches do. Sark talks about he
oh
loves to
yeah,
play on the road. They love that everybody's against us role. Joey
Well, Mike
specifically
Leach loved it.
he did. Joey specifically does, and I thought it was intriguing when he was talking about Sark. He likes Sark. I guarantee you
Oh,
at
yeah.
some point before the
Yeah.
season even starts, they'll talk again. He speaks very highly of him. Sark speaks highly of Joey, and Sark has since said, sometimes I say things because I'm very accessible to media, and maybe I go back and I see them differently. There's a lot of respect between those two guys.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was interesting because Joey, is as well as he said, how much he respects Sark and who he is, he's got to stand up for his team, and that's why the
Right.
whole thing started. Let's play week 1 and all that, because it doesn't actually help them to play Texas week 1 either. That doesn't help
No.
teams a lot. But
Right.
he said, I just, basically came out and admitted I couldn't let that go. We had to
No.
say something about
No,
it.
somebody kicks dirt on your home plate.
You got to do
You don't
something
let that
about it.
happen.
Yeah, you do.
That's
Right.
right.
But I do think
Well,
you're
this
right. I think
has been
against
good.
Texas, against TCU, I think not only, and I think this is going to be the more outspoken. I'm sure there's a list somewhere in their locker room.
Oh, yeah.
I think not
I'm
only will
sure
they
there
try to get
is.
the touchdown, I think they'll go for 2 as well as the clock runs out. So.
I think you're probably right. Well, this has been good. And again, I think now I am glad it's behind us.
Yeah.
I'm glad that that maybe we can get on to other things. I think even the hatred of Texas Tech will die down until the first kickoff of the first game anyway. But it's time to let it go and let's move forward. Let's hope that we have learned something and maybe we can come up with some solutions down the road.
Yeah.
If
I'm
not,
actually glad there's somebody else to
I'll
be
still
hated
watch college
because
football.
everybody hates Texas so bad all the time anyway. So I'm glad there's somebody else spending
That's
a lot of
true.
money and complaining because Texas they've been
You
in the
know
hot seat on that.
what's
So
sad? I'm sorry for that because it used to be everybody hated the Aggies in Texas.
I think
Now
people are
everybody
starting to
hates
feel bad
Texas
for them
Tech,
now. It's like,
and
how do you have all these
yeah.
resources and you suck so bad? So it's almost
So
it's like a,
everybody hates Texas Tech, and and the poor Aggies are, they're no
everybody
longer
feels
on the
bad.
hated list.
Everybody's starting to feel bad for them.
Right, right. Oh well.
Yeah, they'll be all right.
All right. Well, listen, this has been great. I look
Enjoyed
forward to
it.
seeing how this plays out,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
we will come back with probably a non-sports related topic
Yeah,
next week.
I'm ready for the actual football season to start. We've had a pretty active off season.
Me
I'm ready
too.
to I'm ready to
Yeah,
roll
time
with
to
the
quit talking about it.
and let's go.
It's time to quit talking about what might happen. Let's start talking about what did happen.
Yep, I agree.
So,
All right, Randy. As always, enjoyed the
all
heck out
right.
of it.
Have a great one.
You as well.
Y'all, you take care now, man.